morning, the clock struck midnight. I stood there staring at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, tears streaming down my face, everything I had built over the past decade. My business, my savings, my relationships lay in ruins around me. Rock bottom doesn't begin to describe it. That night, I made a choice that would transform not just my life, but the lives of countless others I've met since then. I picked up a sticky note and a pen. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely write. 5 words. Just 5 simple words. One small step each day. That note became my lifeline. You're sitting here right now because something inside you knows there's more. More to achieve, more to become, more to give. But that voice in your head keeps whispering. Tomorrow, start tomorrow, wait until you're ready, wait until it's perfect. I want to tell you about Maria. She was a single mother working 3 jobs, sleeping 4 hours a night, barely keeping food on the table for her 2 young children. Every morning, she would set her alarm 15 minutes earlier than necessary. Just 15 minutes. In those precious moments before her children woke up, she would study 1 page of a textbook, 1 video lesson. Her friends told her she was crazy. You need sleep. They said, it's impossible to get a degree this way. 3 years later, Maria walked across the stage to receive her nursing degree. 15 minutes, day after day. You see, success isn't born in grand gestures. It's not found in motivational quotes plastered on your wall or in endless hours of watching inspirational videos. Success is built in the quiet moments when no one's watching. In the small choices we make when every fiber of our being screams for comfort, for delay. I remember John, a recovering addict who had lost everything to his demons. His path to recovery didn't start with some dramatic epiphany. It started with making his bed. Every morning, no matter how he felt, no matter what chaos swirled around him, he made his bed. On one simple action. A tiny victory to build upon. It's stupid, he told me, laughing through tears. How can making a bed change anything? But that one action led to another. And another. Today, John runs a successful recovery program helping others find their way back from the brink. It started with a bed. The human brain craves comfort. It's wired for survival, not success. Every time you try to change, to grow, to push beyond your limits, your brain fires warning signals. It creates elaborate stories about why you should wait, why you're not ready, why it's too hard. Listen closely. Those stories are lies. I met Sarah at a conference last year. She had dreamed of starting her own business for 20 years. 20 years of planning, researching, preparing, 20 years of waiting for the perfect moment. Then her daughter asked her a question that shattered her worlds. Mom, if you never start your business, how will I know it's okay to chase my dreams? The next morning, Sarah didn't launch a website. She didn't rent an office space. She didn't quit her job. She made 1 phone call to a potential client. The call lasted 5 minutes. The client said no. But Sarah made another call the next day. And another the day after that. 6 months later, she had first paying client. A year later, she had 10. Today, he employs 15 people, including her daughter. One call, one action, one step forward. You're probably thinking, but you don't understand my situation. You don't know how hard it is. You don't know what I'm facing, and you're right. I don't. But I know this, and the laws of growth, of progress, of transformation are universal. They don't care about your circumstances. They respond to only one thing: action. Consider Michael, a man born with cerebral palsy. The doctors told his parents he would never walk, never speak clearly, never live independently. Michael heard these predictions and made a decision.
Right now,
he would move one muscle, any muscle, every single day.
You're standing at a
Some days, that movement was barely visible.
Will determine the rest of your life.
Some days, it caused so much pain he wanted to quit.
Past this opportunity,
but he kept going.
Oblivious to the power they hold.
One movement every day.
But you're
today, Michael not only walks,
deep down,
he runs marathons.
There's more to life than what
He not
meets
only
the eye.
speaks,
Think about it. How many
he
times
gives
have you
speeches to
felt
thousands.
stuck, trapped in a loop
But
of the
more
same old
importantly, he
thoughts,
shows others
the
what's
same old
possible when you
feelings,
refuse to
the
accept
same old life.
limitations.
It's like you're
The
watching
power
a
of
movie
daily
your
action
life,
isn't just about
but you're
achieving
not
goals.
the director. You're just
It's
a
about who you
passive
become in the
observer,
process.
reacting
Each
to
time
whatever
you
comes
choose
your way.
action
But
over
what if I
comfort,
told you that you have
growth
the
over
power to
safety,
change that
progress
script?
over
What
perfection,
if I told
you
that
reshape
you
your
could become the
identity.
director,
You
the
prove to
writer,
yourself that
and
you are
star
someone who
of
does
your
what
own
needs
life
to be
story?
done.
This isn't just
I worked with a
positive thinking or
soldier
wishful
who
dreaming.
returned from war with
This is
severe
science.
PTSD.
This is the
He
reality
couldn't
of how your
sleep,
brain and body work
couldn't maintain
together
relationships,
to create your life
couldn't hold down a job.
experience. And once you
The
understand
trauma
this,
had
once
wrapped
you
itself
truly
around
grasp
every
the
aspect of his
potential
life
within
like a
you,
poisonous
your life will
vine.
never be the
Sorry,
same.
his healing
Let's talk
didn't
about
begin
your
with
brain
therapy
for a
or
moment.
medication.
Your brain
Though
is the
those
most
played their
powerful
part.
supercomputer on the planet.
It began with a promise to
capable of
himself.
processing
Every day
millions of
he would
bits of
spend
information
5
every
minutes sitting in
second.
silence.
But here's the kicker.
Just
Most
5
people
minutes,
use their brains
facing
to
his
relive
thoughts,
the past
his fears,
or
his
worry about the
memories.
future. They're
His
stuck in a
5
loop of
minutes were
memory and
excruciating at first.
anticipation,
Sometimes
never
he
fully
couldn't make it
present
past
in
2
the now.
minutes.
But your brain isn't just
But he
for
kept showing
remembering
up.
or predicting.
Day
It's a
after
creation
day.
machine. Every
5
thought you
minutes
think sends
became
a
10.
cascade of chemicals
10
through your
became
body.
20.
These
Slowly,
chemicals
painfully,
shape your emotions,
he reclaimed
your
his mind,
actions,
his
and
life, his
ultimately your
future.
reality.
What's your 5
And you
minutes?
understand this when you really get it.
What
You
is
realize
small
that your
action you've
thoughts
been
aren't just
avoiding?
fleeting
The one
moments in
step
your
you
head.
know you need to
They're
take.
blueprints for your future.
Maybe it's opening now.
I want you to pause for a moment, take a deep
Savings
breath,
account you've
feel
been
the
putting
air
off.
filling your
Maybe
lungs.
it's
A
making
simple
that
act
doctor's
of
appointment
awareness
you've
of
been
being present
dreading.
in your body is the
Maybe
first
it's
step
writing the
towards
first
changing your
sentence
life.
of that book
Because when
that's
you're
been burning
present
inside
and
you.
you're fully here in this moment,
The size
you
of the
step out
action
the
doesn't
automatic
matter.
patterns that have been running your
What
life.
matters is the
Most
decision to
people
act.
spend their entire
I
lives on
remember
autopilot.
sitting
They wake up, go to work,
in a
come home,
coffee
watch
shop,
TV, go to sleep, and repeat.
watching
Day
an
after
elderly
day,
woman teach
year
her
after year,
adult daughter how to
they're
knit.
living by the emotions of their past.
The daughter was
experience.
frustrated,
They're
her
allowing
fingers
their
clumsy
past
with the
to dictate
needles.
their future. But that's
I
not
can't do
living,
this,
that's
she
existing,
exclaimed.
and you were meant
I'm
for
too
so
old
much
to learn.
more. You see, your
The
body
mother
doesn't know
smiled
the
and said
difference
something
between
I'll
a
never
real
forget.
experience
Darling,
and
the
one
time will
that you
pass
vividly
anyway.
Imagine. When you
In a
close
year,
your eyes and really
you can
feel
either
the
be
future
an innovator
possibility,
who
your body
started
begins to
late
change in the
or
present
still
moment.
be
Your
someone who
genes
never
start to
tried.
express themselves
That's the heart of it, isn't it?
Your brain starts to fire.
The
in new
time will
patterns.
pass anyway.
You literally
The
begin to
days will
become
tick
the
by.
person you're imagining.
The
This
seasons
isn't
will
magic, it's
change.
biology.
And will
It's
either be
physics, it's
people
the
who
way
took
your body and
action,
mind are
who moved
designed to work
forward,
together.
who grew, or people who are still waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect plan, the perfect feeling. Here's what I know for certain. The perfect moment is a myth. The perfect plan is a fantasy. The perfect feeling will never come. What we have is this moment, this opportunity, this chance to take one small step forward. Think about water dripping on a rock. One drop seems insignificant. 1,000 drops seem futile. But over time, water shapes stone. Not through force or violence, but through consistent, persistent action. You are the water. Your dreams, your goals, your aspirations are the rock. Every small action is a drop. Enough drops over enough time will carve a path through any obstacle. I want to share a technique that transformed my approach to daily action. It's called the 2-minute promise. Each morning, I promise myself to spend just 2 minutes on my most important goal. Just 2 minutes, no more is required. Often, those 2 minutes expand naturally into 10, 20 or more. But sometimes they don't, and that's okay. Because the power isn't in the duration, it's in the decision to begin, the decision to show up, the decision to take action, no matter how small. This brings me to a crucial truth. Motivation is a lie. At least the way most people think about it. They wait to feel motivated before taking action. They wait for inspiration to strike. They wait for the stars to align. But here's what champions notice. Action creates motivation, movement generates momentum. Remember that night in the bathroom, staring at my tear-stained reflection. The next morning, I didn't feel motivated. I didn't feel inspired. I felt broken, scared, and hopeless. But I took one small action. I made a list of people I needed to apologize to. I didn't call them all that day. I didn't even call one. I just made the list. The next day I made one call, just one.
To persist in the face.
It was as awkward, painful, and imperfect.
Instead, I want you to
but
make
I made
a
it.
commitment right now.
That one call led to another.
To yourself, to
and
your
another.
Growth, to your evolution.
Each action, no matter how small, created a tiny spark of hope.
Because
those sparks over time ignited a fire of transformation that continues to burn. You see, we often think we need to feel different to act different.
Most people
but the opposite is true.
Success is about what
we need to act different to feel different.
Lasting success,
our actions shape our emotions, not the other way around. There's a moment I'll never forget. I was sitting in a homeless shelter, volunteering to serve meals.
Instead of asking,
a man named Marcus approached me, his eyes bright with an intensity that caught me off guard. He pulled out a worn notebook from his jacket pocket. First, see something?
On who you want.
Yes.
Because when you change who you are,
inside that notebook
everything else in
were
your life
847 check marks.
This is where the real
one for each day. He'd stayed sober.
It's not just about
what struck me wasn't the number, it was what he said next. I don't think about staying sober forever. I don't even think about staying sober for a week.
The future you want to create.
I think about staying sober for the next hour.
Level of coherence.
Sometimes the next minute.
Force of creation.
And I put a check mark at the end of each day.
Think
That's
about
all.
all the times in your
847
life when you
days.
felt truly alive.
Built minute by minute,
when you were so focused,
hour by hour, once, and this is the secret that transformed Marcus's life.
Maybe it was when you were creating,
and it can transform you, break down your mountains into pebbles. Then move one pebble at a time. I worked with an Olympic athlete who shared something fascinating about her training. People assume Olympic champions think about gold medals all day.
What we're aiming for.
They don't.
Just in rare moments, but
they think about the next rep.
Because when you're fully present,
the next lap,
when you're operating
the next breath,
of coherence,
if I focus on the Olympics while I'm in the pool, she told me
your intuition becomes sharper. You start
so I focus on this lap,
opportunities
this stroke, this moment. She won gold.
You start to make
not in one magnificent moment of glory, but in thousands of small moments of choice.
From fear or habit.
Moments when she chose action over excuse, movement over comfort, progress over perfection.
But here's the thing.
Consider your own life. Think about the goals that seem overwhelming, the changes that feel impossible, the dreams that look too big to achieve.
It requires a willingness
now break
to
them
face
down.
The parts of yourself that you've been
What's the smallest possible action you could take toward that goal? I met a woman who lost 180 pounds.
Stay in their comfort zone.
People always ask her how she did it.
Is making them miserable.
They expect to hear about some miracle diet or revolutionary exercise program. Her answer, I started by walking to my mailbox. That's it.
You to fall in love
just to her mailbox and back.
Discovery of uncovering new.
The next week she walked to her neighbor's mailbox.
The truth is,
then to the corner. Each day, a little further. Each day,
you are so much
a little stronger.
Current circumstances.
Hardest step, she told me, wasn't on a 5K or giving up sugar.
Think about it this way.
It was putting on my shoes that first day and walking to the mailbox. This is where most people get stuck.
In human understanding.
They look at the end goal, losing 180 pounds. Building a successful business, writing a book, transforming a relationship, and they freeze. The gap between where they are and where they want to be seems too vast, too impossible to bridge. But here's the truth. You don't have to bridge it all at once. You just have to take the next step. Then another. I remember working with a man who had crippling social anxiety. He couldn't even make phone calls to order pizza. His goal was to become a public speaker, something that seemed absolutely impossible given his condition. You know what his first step was? Saying good morning to one person each day. That's it. Not giving a speech, not leading a meeting, just good morning. 6 months later, he spoke at a local community meeting. 2 years later, he gave a TEDx talk. Today, he trains other public speakers. But it all started with good morning. This brings us to a crucial point. The size of your action doesn't determine its significance. What matters is the commitment to taking action consistently, regardless of its scale. You know, I think about building a house, every nail matters. Every screw counts. Every small piece contributes to the final structure. Miss enough small pieces and the whole thing falls apart. Your life works the same way. Every small action builds something. Every choice creates momentum. Every decision shapes your future. I once asked a master carpenter how he built such beautiful furniture. His answer surprised me. I don't build furniture, he said. I make one perfect cut at a time. The furniture builds itself. This wisdom applies to every area of life. You don't build a marriage. You make one loving choice at a time. You don't build a career. You complete one task at a time. You don't build character. You make one. Let me tell you about Rachel. She was a middle school teacher drowning in debt. $87,000 worth. She felt hopeless, trapped, ashamed. So she didn't tackle it. Instead, she saved $1. Then $5. Then whatever she could each day. Some days it was just quarters she found in her car. But she kept going, kept saving, kept believing. 4 years later, she made her final payment. And not through some financial windfall or miracle, but through thousands of small financial decisions, $1 at a time, one choice at a time, one day at a time. Her debt didn't disappear overnight, she told me. But neither did it appear overnight. It built up slowly, and that's how I had to dismantle it. Slowly, steadily, consistently. This is the power of daily action. It compounds. Each small step builds on the ones before it, creating momentum that eventually becomes unstoppable. Think about a space shuttle launch. The first few feet of movement require more fuel than the entire rest of the journey combined. Why? Because it's overcoming inertia. That initial resistance to movement, your life works the same way. Starting is hard. Taking that first step feels almost impossible. But once you're in motion, staying in motion becomes easier. I worked with a writer who struggled with procrastination. She had a novel inside her, but couldn't seem to get it onto paper. Every time she sat down to write, she froze. So we changed her approach. Instead of trying to write her novel, her only task was to write one sentence. That's all. One sentence every day, no matter what. Some days, that one sentence turned into pages. Other days, it remained just one sentence. But she kept showing up, kept writing, kept moving. 3 years later, her book hit the bestseller list. Not because she wrote it in one burst of inspiration, but because she wrote it one sentence at a time. One day at a time, one choice at a time. This brings us to another crucial truth. The path to success isn't linear. It's not a steady climb upward. It's messy, it's full of setbacks, obstacles, but you're still taking action. Are you still moving forward? Even if it's just by millimeters? Are you still showing up even when you don't see results? I remember working with a recovering gambling addict. He had relapsed 7 times. 7 times he had to start over. 7 times he had to face his family, his friends, himself, and admit failure. But here's what he taught me. Even failure, it's part of the process. Each time he started over, he started stronger, wiser, more determined. I don't count the relapses anymore, he told me. I count the times I got back up. That's the only number that matters. Today, he counsels other addicts, helping them understand that recovery isn't about never falling. It's about always getting back up, always taking the next step, always choosing action over inaction. This is where real transformation happens. Not in the moments of triumph, but in the moments of choice, the moments when you're tired, discouraged, defeated, and you choose to take action. I worked with an entrepreneur whose first 3 businesses failed. Not just failed, they failed spectacularly. She lost money, time, relationships. Each failure left scars. But every morning she asked herself one question. What's the smallest step I can take today toward my next attempt? Sometimes that step was reading one article about business strategy. Sometimes it was making one networking call. Sometimes it was just updating her LinkedIn profile. Her 4th business succeeded beyond her wildest dreams. Not because it was a better idea than the others, but because she had learned the power of persistent, consistent daily action. This is the paradox of transformation. The biggest changes come from the smallest actions repeated consistently over time. Think about waves hitting a shoreline. Each wave seems insignificant, but over time, those waves reshape continents. They carve out
step into the
coastlines.
unknown. It all came
They
from someone being
transform
willing to
landscapes.
question the
Their
status
daily
quo
actions are like
to
those
challenge
waves.
the accepted
Each one
beliefs.
might
You
seem
have that
small,
same
insignificant,
potential
even
within you.
futile.
You have the ability to make breakthroughs
But together,
in your own
over
life,
time, they have the power
challenge
to
your own
reshape your
limiting
entire
beliefs,
life.
to step into
I want
a
you to
new
understand
way of
something
being.
crucial.
But it requires
You don't have to feel
courage.
ready to take
It
action.
requires a willingness
You don't
to
have to
let
feel
go of
confident.
who you think you are.
You don't have to feel motivated.
To be. This is where meditation
You just have to
is so
act. Let me tell you about
when you meditate,
the most
take
powerful
time
moment
to
I've ever
quiet your
witnessed.
mind and connect with something
It
greater than
happened
yourself.
in a
You
nursing
create
home
space for new
of
insights
all
to emerge.
places.
You break free
A
from the
92-year-old
constant
woman
shadow of
named
habitual
Eleanor was
thoughts
learning
and
to play the
apathy and
piano.
wisdom. But
Right?
here's the key.
The other residents
Meditation isn't just about
The
sitting
staff smiled
quietly and
politely. Her
trying to
own
empty your
family
mind.
tried to talk her out of
It's
it.
about
Mom, they
actively
said,
creating a
you're
new state of
92.
being. It's about
Why
using
start
the
now?
power of your
Hence,
focus
I
to
silenced
create
every daughter in the
coherence
room.
between your thoughts and your
Because
feelings,
I'm
between
still
your mind and
breathing.
your body. Imagine
3
if
months later,
every day
Eleanor
you
played
took time
Twinkle,
to step out of your
Twinkle,
routine, to
Little
close your
Star of the
eyes
nursing
and
home
create a
talent
vision
show.
of your future so compelling
It wasn't
that your
perfect.
body begins to believe it's happening.
It wasn't professional.
Imagine if you could
But it was
sustain
proof
that
of something
state, not just
extraordinary.
for a few seconds, but
As long
for
as you're
minutes at a
breathing, it's
time.
not too late
What
to take
kind of
action.
changes
This
do
brings
you
us to a
think
fundamental truth
would
about
start
action.
to happen in your life?
The
This
perfect
is where the
moment
real
will
magic
never
happens.
arrive.
This is where you start to bend
The perfect
reality.
circumstances
Because
will
when
never
you can
align. The
maintain
perfect
an
feeling will
elevated
never come.
emotion, like
I worked
joy,
with a
gratitude, or love,
paramedic who shared
independent of
something
your external
profound about emergency
circumstances,
response.
You send a powerful
In a
signal to the
crisis, he
universe.
said,
You're no longer at the
perfect
mercy
is the
your
enemy of
environment.
life-saving.
You're creating your
We don't wait
environment
for
from the
perfect
inside
conditions.
out. Now,
We
I
don't
know
wait
this
for
might
perfect
sound a bit
equipment.
abstract.
We
You
act
might
with
be
what we
thinking,
have,
"That's all
where we
well and
are,
good, but
because
I have
action
real
saves
problems
lives.
to deal with.
Your
I have
dreams are
bills
just
to
as
pay,
urgent. Your goals are
relationships
just
to
as
manage,
critical.
goals to achieve.
Your
And
potential
I
is just
hear
as
you.
precious.
I'm not saying you should ignore your
They require
practical
action,
responsibilities.
imperfect,
I'm saying
immediate,
that by
consistent.
changing
Think
your
about
inner
breathing for a
state,
moment.
You change
You
the
don't
way
wait
you
until
approach those
conditions are perfect to take your next
Think
breath.
about it. Have you ever
You
noticed
don't wait
how
until you feel
different
motivated
the
to
world
inhale.
looks when you're in a great mood
You don't wait
versus
until
when
you're fully
stressed
prepared
or
to exhale.
anxious? The
You just
external
breathe.
circumstances might be exactly
Your actions
the
should be
same,
as natural,
but your perception
as
of
automatic
them,
as
your
breathing.
reaction to them is completely
Not because
different.
they're
That's the
easy,
power
but
of your
because
inner
they're
state.
necessary
Now
for your
imagine if you
growth,
could
your progress,
consciously choose
your
inner
life.
state,
I remember meeting a
regardless of
former
what's
prisoner
happening
who
around you.
transformed his life
Imagine
through
if
this
you could
principle.
approach every situation
In his cell,
from a
he had
place
no
of
gym, no
clarity,
equipment, no trainer.
creativity. How would that change
But he
the
had
way you
gravity
deal
and
with
his body
challenges?
weight.
How would that change
Every
the
day he did
opportunities you
push-ups.
notice and take advantage
Started with one.
of? This is
Just
the level
one.
of mastery we're aiming
By the
for.
time he was
It's
released,
not about ignoring
he could do
reality or
1,000.
pretending that problems don't exist.
But more importantly,
It's
he
about
had built
approaching
something
life
beyond
from a higher
physical
level of
strength.
consciousness
He
from
had
a
built
place
the
of
habit of
possibility
daily
rather than
action,
limitation. But here's the
of
thing.
showing up,
This
of
level
pushing
mastery
through regardless
doesn't
of
happen
circumstances.
overnight. It's not
Today, he
about
runs a
having
fitness
one profound
program for at-risk
experience and
youth.
then everything in your life
I don't teach them
magically
about
changes.
exercise.
It's about
He tells me.
consistent practice.
I
Day after
teach them
day,
about
week
showing up.
after week, month after
About
month.
doing
It's
what
about
needs to be
making this
done
new
regardless of
way
how they
being
feel or what's
your
happening
new
around them.
normal. And yes,
This
there
is
will
the
be
secret
challenges
that
along
every
the way.
successful person
There will be
knows.
times when you fall back
Success
into old
isn't
patterns,
about
when you forget
intensity,
everything
it's
you've
about
learned and react from a
consistency.
place
It's
of
not
fear or
about doing
habit.
extraordinary
That's okay.
things.
That's
It's
part of
about
the
doing
process.
ordinary things with
The
extraordinary
key is to not
consistency.
let those moments
I worked
define
with a
you.
woman
Instead,
who
see
overcame
them
severe
as
depression,
opportunities to
not through
thrive.
any miracle cure, but through what she called her non-negotiables. Tiny actions she committed to taking every day, no matter what. Her first non-negotiable was making her bed. Seems small, doesn't it? But here's what she understood. The size of the action doesn't matter nearly as much as the fact that you're acting at all. Heck, she added opening her curtains, then stepping outside for 1 minute, then calling one person. Small actions stacked one on top of another, day after day, week after week. 3 years later, she stood on stage sharing her story with thousands. The audience wanted to know her secret. They expected to hear about breakthrough therapies or revolutionary medication. Instead, she held up a piece of paper with a list of non-negotiables. This is how I rebuilt my life, she said. One tiny action at a time, one day at a time, no matter what. This brings us to another crucial understanding. Action isn't just about achieving goals. It's about becoming someone new. Every time you choose action over inaction, you're not just doing something different, you're becoming someone different. I remember working with a father who wanted to rebuild his relationship with his teenage son. Years of absence had created a wall between them. The gap seemed impossible to bridge. His first action, sending a text message, just good morning, every day for weeks. He got no response. But he kept sending those messages. Then he started adding questions about his son's day, about his interests, about his dreams. Slowly, the responses started coming. Short at first, one word. Then sentences. Then conversations. Today they have dinner together every Sunday. Not because of some grand gesture or dramatic moment, but because of consistent, persistent, daily action. This is how real change happens, but through evolutions. Not through quantum leaps, but through microscopic movements in the right direction, repeated with religious consistency. Consider water in a pot. For a long time as it heats up, nothing seems to happen. The water remains water. But every moment of heat application is creating change at the molecular level. Then suddenly, your life works the same way. Every small action is creating change, even when you can't see it. Even when nothing seems to be happening. Even when it feels futile. I worked with an artist who spent 10 years working a corporate job she hated. Every morning, she woke up an hour early to paint. Just an hour. Just for herself. No grand ambitions, no dreams of galleries or exhibitions. Then one day, someone saw her work and offered to buy it. Then another person. Then another. Today, she's a full-time artist with a waiting list of collectors. But here's what's crucial to understand. Success didn't come from that first sale. It came from showing up every morning for 10 years, doing the work, taking action, staying consistent. This is the ultimate truth about action. It's not about the immediate result. It's about who you become through the process of showing up day after day, regardless of results. Think about a garden. We plant a seed. Nothing seems to happen for a long time. But under the surface, incredible transformations are taking place. The seed is gathering resources, developing roots, preparing for growth. Actions are like those seeds. Every small action plants something in the soil of your future. Every consistent choice waters those seeds. Every persistent effort tends to their growth. And I want to share one final story. It's about a woman I met who had been blind since birth. She decided at age 40 to learn. Impossible, right? That's what everyone told her. How can you paint if you can't see? But she understood something profound about action. And the only real limitations are the ones we accept. So she started. She learned to feel textures, to understand colors through temperature, to paint with her hands, her heart. Today, her paintings sell for thousands of dollars. Not because they're technically perfect, but because they represent something more powerful than perfect. They represent the triumph of action over excuse, of persistence over limitation, of courage over fear. This is what I want you to take away today. Your actions, no matter how small, have power. Your consistency, no matter how imperfect, has value. Your persistence, no matter how challenged, has worth. Every morning when you wake up, you have a choice. You can wait for the perfect moment, the perfect feeling, the perfect circumstance, or you can take action. You can move forward. You can grow. Remember Marcus and his 847 check marks. Remember Eleanor and her piano. Remember the prisoner and his push-ups. Remember the father and his text messages. They weren't extraordinary people. They didn't have extraordinary circumstances. They didn't have extraordinary resources. They just made an extraordinary commitment to daily action. That's what I'm asking of you today. Not to be perfect, not to be extraordinary, just to be consistent, to take action, to move forward, even if it's just by a millimeter. Here's the truth. A year from now, you wish you had started today. 5 years from now, you look back on this moment as either the moment you began to change or the moment you chose to stay the same. The choice is yours. The time is now. The next move is yours to make. What will your first action be?